Hey guys, welcome to Stoppage Time on Friday, November the 8th. This is a special edition of Stoppage Time. This is the MLS Cup Finals edition, 2019. With me is WagerTalk's Pavlos Laguretos. Pavlos, how you doing, buddy?
Hello, Carmine. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. Just preparing for a very heavy soccer
Yeah,
weekend.
it's last weekend before the international break again, so we've got a lot of obviously EPL, La Liga, Serie A games, Bundesliga, all the top leagues before we head to that break. But most importantly, the MLS Cup Finals on Sunday, and that's what we're here to talk about. So I'm
Exactly.
gonna tell people right off the bat who are watching this, we're gonna have two different views, slightly biased. I am the finals this year for the third time in 4 years. And nobody was expecting this. It is Toronto FC versus the Seattle Sounders. This is again third time in 4 years, but the first time it'll be played in Seattle at CenturyLink, where they're expecting 70,000 fans for the game. I am a season ticket holder for Toronto FC, so I'm a little biased in that sense. But we're gonna try and give you some props to those that are watching. And you, my friend, are a Seattle Sounders fan.
Yes, yes, I am. It's the first team that really caught my eye, because I live in Greece and people don't usually watch soccer. They watch, European football. But when I started watching soccer, just I don't know how many years back it was, it was the Seattle Sounders that caught my eye because I was also a Seattle
Ah,
Supersonics
yeah, yeah.
fan. Uh, so yeah, I'm with the
Yeah,
Sounders.
and Seattle's. It's a nice place to visit if you haven't been there, and they've got an NHL team coming, so and they've got a pretty damn
Oh,
good NFL football team as well too. So it's going to be hopping there. It's a fantastic stadium to play in. I think the last time an MLS Cup was hosted in Seattle. It wasn't Seattle. This is back in the days where a neutral field was used, and it was Real Salt Lake versus the LA Galaxy that went to penalty kicks, and Real Salt Lake upset the Galaxy 5-4 in penalty kicks. So one person who was on that field for that game will be on the field again on Sunday, and that is Omar Gonzalez, the center back for Toronto FC. He's back from an injury. It's up to manager Greg Vanney on whether he'll be in the starting lineup, but I can't see why he would not be in there. He has done a fantastic job at solidifying that Toronto defense that was leaky at the beginning of the year, allowing goals almost by the bucketful. He came in. He spent a few years in Mexico and signed with Toronto this season and made an immediate impact. All right, listen, I'm going to throw some odds at you, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the game. I want to hear your thoughts. Currently, the line is Seattle is minus 110, Toronto is plus 300, the draw is plus 250, and the total is 2.5, which is sometimes a little strange for a cup final. You would think it would probably be about three, but this is Seattle, this is Toronto. They've met twice before in the finals. 3 years ago in Toronto at BMO Field, Seattle won in penalty kicks after a scoreless draw through obviously regulation and the 30 minutes of extra time. The following season, back at BMO Field again, Toronto beat Seattle, a bit of a revenge there, and beat them 2-0. So where are you leaning here?
I'll try to be as non-biased, if that's even a word here. Um, I I'd really like the Sounders to win this one because they're my favorite team, but we have to see this from an unbiased perspective. So Toronto, they have been really strong to finish the season. I think they only lost once, and it was a cup match, a Canadian
Yeah,
Cup match. Um, they're running. How is it? It's
13.
a huge
13 in a
streak.
row unbeaten.
Yeah, they're also undefeated in their last 8 MLS matches, and they lost just once in their last 10 matches in all competitions. So it's really hard to go against them, at least in regular time. Even though the price on the Sounders is really tempting to me, at least. Now, as for the goals, the totals, the last three MLS finals had under 2.5 goals, and the four before those, in succession, they had over 2.5 goals. So there might be a trend happening in the last few years that teams are more careful in the finals. As we saw, under 2.5 goals in the last three. Now, Seattle and Toronto played just once this season. It was a 2-3 Seattle win at home, but I don't think that we'll see a very high scoring match because both teams know they're very experienced in the playoffs. They have great teams, great players, a lot of experience also in the squad. So I think that we'll see a very careful match between the two sides, maybe a draw at halftime. This could be a really realistic bet to go after. Um, yeah, I think that the Sounders can win by 1-0, I guess. That would be my
Yeah, and
one.
if if the sports books that any of you guys out there play at, usually for a cup final in any competition, they'll have a ton of props up. For the MLS Cup Final, I would expect most books to have correct score predictions and odds. 1-0 Seattle is plus 800, so you're getting 8-1 on your money. It is the third, as far as looking at the numbers, it's the third lowest predicted score. 1-1 draw is actually the favorite right now at plus 600, 6-1 odds. Obviously, all these bets are graded on 90 minutes and any injury time. Does not include extra time. So there's a good possibility of that 1-1. I'm going to go further on that in a few minutes, but 1-0 is 8-1 and 2-1, which is a typical score that you see in soccer quite often. Plus 750. That is the second choice, other than the 1-1 draw line. It's going to be an interesting one, and I tend to agree with what you're saying as far as these teams have a lot of familiarity with themselves. I don't think you can look at the first game they played this year in Seattle. It was a 3-2 final. I don't think you can really look at that. The team starting 11s were completely different than they are now. Toronto had a back three that included Zavaleta, who wasn't a very good defender. Omar was not yet on the team. Toronto played four in the back now. They have in the playoffs. It's worked great for them. They have the Brazilian Oro on one side and Moro on the other, and those left and right backs literally move up and down the field to sort of spread the field a bit. Toronto is a ball possession team. So is Seattle. So I don't expect to see too much attacking here, especially Toronto. Josie Altidore, I seriously doubt he'll be in the lineup. I don't even think he'll be on the bench. He's had a quad injury that he injured in the last game of the season, and he's been running, but he hasn't been practicing with the team. He hasn't even kicked the ball. It just to put him out there, he's not going to risk further injury just because it is a cup final. He could literally ruin himself for the rest of his career.
Yeah, that's true.
Some prop wagers. Okay, I'm going to throw these at you. Pozuelo plus 175 to score. Of course, he's a natural number 10. Toronto picked him up this season. They bought out his contract. He played for Genk in the Belgium league. He helped them qualify for this year's Champions League, and then he came to Toronto. He was named one of the top 11 MLS players this season. He made the starting 11 of the MLS best 11, and he's plus 175. He's a natural 10, but he's had to move forward with Altidore being out of the lineup. So, but he's got 2 goals, 2 assists in the MLS playoffs so far, including that fantastic Panenka against New York City FC to win the game. Only a European could do this. You know what I mean? You just don't see a Canadian or an American, not to disparage them, trying the Panenka. So
Not yet.
not yet.
At least. Not yet.
For your Seattle Sounders, sorry, I'm just going to throw one more, and then I'm going to throw this to you, and you can give me your thoughts. This guy is scoring for Seattle. He's playing fantastic right now, especially in the playoffs, is Rui Diaz. And he's plus 110 to score. If anyone's going to score for Seattle, I know Jordan Morris has been scoring, but it's going to be Rui Diaz. And plus 110 is, I think, fantastic odds. He should probably be in the negatives, like minus 130, minus 140, but you're getting plus 110.
Let's talk about Pozuelo for starters, because he's not playing, as you said, in his natural position, because Toronto is using a sort of a false 9. They're using him as a false 9, where he's not actually a number 10, and he's not exactly a forward. He stands in between those lines, and he collects balls and tries to get his other teammates down at the flanks. Jose Altidore is very good at doing that, so they just I think that Toronto tried to substitute someone with the same skill set or the same way of playing. So he's really the one to watch. He could easily score if the game. Yeah, he'll score. I agree with you on that. Now let's talk about Rui Diaz. He's probably the best player. Yeah, I think he's the best player in the Seattle squad right now, along with Lodeiro maybe, who is also someone to watch, but he usually hands out assists. He doesn't score all that much. So yeah, Rui Diaz he's gonna get a lot of touches. He's gonna be the main threat to Toronto's defense. So yeah, I agree on both. They both are really good players, and it would be the best to see a 1-1 draw with those 2 scorers.
It definitely would. And you mentioned Lodeiro of Seattle, and I'm not even sure this man is human. And by this I mean I have never seen someone cover so much of the field, and he just doesn't get tired. He is out there for 90 minutes unless they substitute him off for some reason, and he just doesn't stop. He's unbelievable. He's such an asset to that team, and this is a different Seattle team than they were 2 years ago or 3 years ago, where they would sit back and just defend and then hope to score a goal. They attack you now, and they come at you. And this is why, like, initially I looked at this total and I thought 2.5 seems low, but in the scheme of things, I don't think it is. Again, these two have a history, and I believe that they know each team's strength and weaknesses, and because of that, neither one's going to be caught off guard. Neither one's going to be surprised. So unless we get some defensive mistakes or penalties in the box, seeing 3 goals in this game might not happen, right? And when you're taking proposition bets with goal scorers, it's kind of tough thinking it's going to go under, but then you're also playing people to score. But we're giving you the most likely to score if it happens. I did play a proposition wager earlier, both teams to score. It was 135 when I played it. It's at 145 this morning, because this could very easily be 1-1 once again, yes, heading to extra time and or penalty kicks. So 1-1 is paying at 6-1 odds. It's not that bad. If you're betting on this game, let me throw this one at you. If you're betting on this game, and you like Seattle, but you're worried about it going to extra time and penalty kicks, let's say. Seattle to lift the trophy is minus 225. Toronto to lift the trophy is plus 162. So for anyone out there unfamiliar with what I'm talking about, to lift the trophy means what the final result will be after 90 minutes, after extra time if it's needed, and after penalty kicks if it's needed. It's literally as it sounds, the team who's going to lift the trophy at the end. Thoughts?
I was thinking about the both teams to score, and it actually is a very solid bet because Toronto, they only failed to score once in their last 10 away matches. They're very consistent scorers with or without Altidore. And let me just say this about Altidore because I was reading the news today, and one coach is saying that he might not play. Altidore said that he might play. I think that they might be trying to cloud the waters, to create a murky situation where Seattle do not know whether to prepare themselves to play against Altidore or against a team that is without Altidore. So, as you said, and you probably know better because you're a Toronto fan, he might not risk himself to play, but we could. I'm just keeping, I'm keeping a short list here because you never know with how these things go in soccer. Also, I'm gonna say that Seattle conceded on 5 occasions. They conceded 3 goals at home, and these matches happened in their last 10 home matches. So we could easily see goals from both sides, and so I'm just, I'm gonna back you up on this one.
Yeah.
So as to who is going to lift the trophy, I'm gonna stick with the Sounders
All right.
on
You're
this one.
sticking with the Sounders. I am undetermined. I would love to see Toronto lift the trophy at plus 162. It's also a wager I took, but it was a biased wager and not one that I'm telling everyone out there to take. I was in Vegas last week, and I was at the sports book, and I did play Toronto at plus 380. I took Toronto plus half a goal against Atlanta, and then I also took Toronto plus 380 to win in 90 minutes, which they did. I will say, extremely lucky. Toronto went down to Atlanta 1-0. Atlanta were awarded a penalty kick. Our goalie saved it, or Toronto's goalie saved it. If you go down 2-0 to Atlanta, you're not coming back. You're not going to beat them. So that penalty kick miss or penalty kick save, whichever way you want to look at, was absolutely crucial in Toronto being where they are now. They were able to score shortly after, tie it up, and then from there, they played their typical game. Like, this is a team that they beat DC United in Wayne Rooney's final game, although the final score was 5-1, but 4 of those goals came in extra time after allowing a 92nd minute goal. They went to New York, the top team in the East. They beat them. They went to Atlanta the following week, and the MLS Cup winners from last year, and beat them, and they were one of the hottest teams around. The one thing I want to say is, I understand it's a home game for Seattle essentially, but the thing here about Toronto, putting any bias again aside, is the fact that this team travels well, are not afraid to play anywhere. You have to remember, this is a team that went to Mexico and played at Azteca Stadium against one of the best Mexican sides and beat them. Not many teams go to Mexico, and especially Azteca, and win. So. And a lot of this 11 were on that team, so it's one of those things where they're not going to be intimidated. One of the things that surprises me that I found out recently is in the last day or so is, okay, this is Michael Bradley's 200th game for in the MLS. It's the last year of his contract. They're unsure whether he's going to be back next year, but he has a clause in his contract. If Toronto wins the MLS Cup, he gets another year at $6.5 million. So Whether we see him
Ooh,
next year is all dependent on what happens on Saturday.
maybe he'll score as well. His motive is too high. Maybe I'll look into the odds of
He
that.
is. I was looking at it earlier as well too. I just thought it was very interesting, but it's such a great sort of storyline because we don't know if whether he's going to be back or not. It's actually the thing that's a bit of I think a shame in that sense, and I'm trying to find. I don't even see him on here. I probably missed him. Bradley, his odds. He's here somewhere. But, one of the interesting things is here he is. He is plus 650 to score. If you think he's going to score the first goal, then you can take him at 20 to 1 odds, plus 200. The interesting thing as far as the Bradley thing goes is this. As you know, with the salary structure of MLS, if they win the cup and they have to give him a contract of $6.5 million, and you already have Pozuelo and you have Altidore with guaranteed contracts, there's no money left for any new DPs for this team. So
True.
it's something that we're stuck with in that sense.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, who knows? So that's a clause that could happen or is guaranteed to happen. Is it the team's
No,
choice or
it's
his choice?
well, he's not. I don't think he's going to walk away from a contract, but the team has to give him that a
Okay.
1-year extension at $6.5 million. So,
Tough choice.
so yeah.
If it's
Well,
even a
this
choice.
is what it comes down to. If this game is 1-1, which we both like, and it goes to penalty kicks, and Bradley is the last one taking a kick, he is
He's gonna
deciding his
go,
own fate.
what to do?
But he's not going to get a contract. He's 32. His last 2 MLS Cup appearances were by far the best games he's ever played in a Toronto FC jersey, I believe, anyways. But at 32, no one's paying him in this league $6.5 million next season to play if he chooses. And I think that he could retire. He could go south and play a couple seasons in Mexico. It's been talked about, you know what I mean? So he was signed for $10 million from AS Roma, if you remember. And
Yeah.
at the time that he signed, there was no fanfare about Bradley. And the reason why is because Toronto had signed at the same time, and they made the announcement at the same time, Jermaine Defoe, who came here from England in the EPL. And they parked the big double-decker bus outside of the sports bar where they did the press conference. And it was all about Jermaine Defoe, who lasted 1 year and then was gone. And Bradley's been the rock and the captain for this team. So any last thoughts before we go? I'm sorry. I think I've done a majority of the talking, so I apologize.
No, it's okay. I agree with most of the things you said. The only thing I don't agree is that Toronto are going to win the title.
Well,
But as far as the both teams to score and the scorers, I totally agree. They're very, very possible
yeah,
outcomes.
it's like I said, some of the props that I played, I did take a draw because at plus 250 for just a draw, regardless of the score, whether it's 0-0, 1-1, 2-2, plus 250 odds. It's always something that in game, if you're in game wagering, you can always take an option on a side later on, and then you've got 2/3 of the game covered.
Yes.
1-1 plus 600, not bad. Both teams to score. Minus 145 now. The under 2.5, I still believe. And then the scores: Pozuelo plus 175, Ruidaz plus 110. Toronto to lift the trophy, but that's a personal one more than anything else. So
Yeah.
and if you like 2-1 score lines and you believe it's going to be a 2-1 score line, you can get Toronto at plus 1250, 12.5 to 1. Seattle at 7.5 to 1, plus 750. Either team winning 2 to 1. So sometimes some of your proposition wagers will obviously, you can't win them all. They'll sort of coincide. But if you think both teams are going to score, and you play the 1-1, 2-1, either way, you're making a profit if it finishes 1-1. If you're making a profit if it finishes 2-1, even though you're only winning one of your 3 wagers, you're making a profit of at least 3 times your initial wager, I guess, or at least double your wager of all the money you spent if it's a 1-1 draw. Okay, listen, that's Paulie Laguretos of WagerTalk. You can find him on Twitter. Follow him along at Laguretos, which is Laguretos. We have a coupon that you guys can use this weekend for any of the soccer that's happening on Saturday or on Sunday at WagerTalk for either one of us. Use the code MLS Cup 15. That's MLS Cup 15. And you get 15 off any one of the soccer packages. And I know Paulie will have EPL cards up, probably La Liga cards, and you'll have MLS Cup cards. So you'll have 4 or 5 cards. You can use that code as many times as you want over the weekend to get his plays or mine. We've given you our thoughts on what we think is going to happen, and we really should have a side bet. I say if Toronto wins, I win the bet. If Seattle wins, you win the bet, and I say the loser has to shave his head. What do you think?
Oh,
that's a good deal. So.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, it is.
Listen, man, thanks for coming on. This was a sort of a shorter edition. We're going to do a Euro 2021 next week, and you'll be talking a heck of a lot more than you did today. That's just because I had all the numbers in front of me. To anyone out there, again, MLS Cup 15 is the promo code. And if you're following along at any of our prop bets, good luck.
Good luck.